Well, I concluded it was a little less than on the fairly reported side. So what we are seeing a lot of over this side of the pond is a heavy bias towards, I don't want to say King Emperor Zelensky. He's just painted in a very holier than thou light. I mean, I kind of call it the theme that is based on Trump. Bravery, a lot of bravery, where Zelensky's name comes up. The rest of it is basic accusations thrown around the media. And unfortunately, for any viewers from the US, they're not favourable to that side of the globe. So, let's start with this BBC story. I mean, it's basically around Zelensky being welcomed when he went to visit his EU backers and so on and so forth. Check it out and let me know what you think in the comments a little bit later.
In Brussels ahead, Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in Brussels ahead of an emergency defence summit with senior EU leaders as Europe prepares to ramp up defence spending. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, said this morning that leaders were meeting to rearm Europe and further cement their support for Ukraine. She says extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures.
This is a watershed moment for Europe. And Ukraine is part of our European family. It's also a watershed moment for Ukraine. Europe faces a clear and present danger. And therefore Europe has to be able to protect itself, to defend itself, as we have to put Ukraine in a position to protect itself and to push for lasting and just peace.
You see, before they come onto the subject of peace, it always sounds a little bit on the, keep the war going side. That just could be me mishearing things.
We want a peace through strength. And this is the reason why I present today to the leaders the Rearm Europe plan. The Rearm Europe plan provides up to 800 billion euros for defense investment. It gives the member states fiscal space to invest in defense. It gives the member states possibility to invest in the Ukrainian defense industry or to procure military capabilities that go right away to Ukraine. So it is to the benefit of rearming Europe, rearming the European Union, but also arming Ukraine.
See, this is why Trump put a halt on the supplies, because from the beginning, when they had that altercation, the Oval Office, and he tried to point out to him that he doesn't hold the cards, they hold the cards. And there's a possibility, if he goes with the US plan, maybe a bit of tweaking, to come out of this not looking too badly. So we're at the stick end of the carrot of the stick program, where he's had to halt the support, because if he kept it going, I do believe Zelensky will feel this war can go on and on.
In its existential fight for its sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Well, Ukraine's President Zelensky also addressed the press ahead of the summit, saying that he is grateful for European support.
We are very thankful that we are not alone, and these are not just words, we feel it. It's very important. You made a strong signal to Ukrainian people, to Ukrainian warriors, to civilians, to all our families, and it's great that we are not alone. We feel it and we know it. Thank you so much for everything, and signals to increase our production and signals to, with the new program, to increase the European security. That's, I think, the great decisions. Thank you.
President Zelensky there on his way into that meeting. Let's just show you some pictures live from inside the meeting room. We are expecting some of those leaders to give us a few words before that meeting starts. Let's go to Nick Beake, who is in Brussels, who is in there in the building.
I reckon it's difficult for him at the moment, you see, because he spent 3 years being a wartime president, wartime leader, that he breathes and sleeps that he goes to bed and wakes up with that in his veins. So to kind of let that go now, I think it'd be kind of difficult for him. Could be one reason why this thing keeps going.
When President Zelenskyy arrived, and Ursula von der Leyen said that this is a watershed moment for Europe, Nick.
She did, Sarah, and I think it was really interesting watching President Zelenskyy. He was just a few metres away from us. The reception he got, the warm reception, the arms that were put around his shoulder, the fact that he was there with Ursula von der Leyen for quite a while, so all the cameras could capture this, images that will be sent and viewed by the Kremlin and by the White House. In terms of what they can achieve today, this is an emergency summit, so it hasn't been weeks and months in the planning, so there isn't a big list of things they're going to tick off and agree on, of course, even if there is agreement. So I think there'll be more strong words later, but in the here and now, President Zelenskyy desperately wants this help, particularly if the Americans are stepping back in terms of military supplies they're sending and not sharing intelligence with Ukraine. So that is one thing they're looking at as...
They want him to reevaluate his position and then just realise that possibly sitting down and going with this peace deal is a better option, because what's happened since the Oval Office issue altercation last Friday, Saturday, is I believe that there's like a race now to who's going to come up with this peace deal. At first, Trump's deal was the only game in town, and then now Macron's got a suggestion, Starmer's got a suggestion, the European group have got a suggestion, and it sounds like a lot of chefs to cook one meal. That could elongate things. With Trump withdrawing American support, that will focus people's attention and speed up the process. I'm guessing, though.
A matter of urgency, and then on the other hand, they're talking about investing billions of euros in the defence industry in Europe in the years and decades to come.
Now, the pictures have just cut away from those leaders inside the meeting room. Just give us an idea of the timetable of today and what we might expect.
They came up with ideas. They did the chit-chat thing as they normally do. Obviously, important matters being discussed, and you know, everybody left the building feeling a little bit more hopeful, I'm guessing. The one that really stuck in my grill was, and I like LBC, most of their presenters, but there's a funny kind of climate at the moment.
Is your WordPress site painfully slow? A slow site means missed opportunity. I've got to turn now to...
And the altercation, I'm quite surprised. You've had a lot of these, a few of the LBC presenters who I normally regard as being balanced and fair-minded, not necessarily Trump deranged. It just seems like everything shifted, and you know, they're just so pro Zelenskyy and this stand by Ukraine, and Trump and Vance being the, I don't even want to use any of the descriptions some of these presenters have used, but I don't see where the balanced thinking's gone. The Trump derangement has just seems to just infected everything. You'll see what I mean if you watch this.
As promised to Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes, former global vice president of Republicans overseas, as an advisor to Donald Trump's 2017 transition team. Dr. Halper-Hayes, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Do you understand why so many in this country...
It's conducted in very bad faith, as you'll see. It doesn't give her a chance to even finish one answer. I don't believe, not even once, she done the right thing, as you'll see.
And in Europe more generally would have seen what happened in the Oval Office as an attempt to humiliate President Zelenskyy and be repulsed by it.
Well, if they watched all 53 minutes, then I don't think they would have that feeling. If they saw clips of it, which of course will be clips of J.D. Vance and Trump being very angry with Zelenskyy, then of course they would come to that.
Could you imagine President Trump speaking to, say, President Putin in that way? And isn't it precisely the point that he...
I'll answer that one. I doubt if President Trump will find himself in a position where he'll need to speak to Putin in that way. You stick that in your coffee, 2 biscuits.
That is part of the problem.
Well, if President Putin pushed him the way Zelensky pushed Trump,
What did
bet.
Zelensky do? What did he do that was so egregious in your view?
Well, one is that he started litigating the 2014. He said, "I don't want a ceasefire."
He said he wants peace repeatedly. He just doesn't want it on Russia's terms, which you'll understand because Russia invaded his country.
But he said, "I don't want a ceasefire." He made that comment to Trump.
He said he doesn't want a ceasefire if he knows that Putin is just going to renege on it a couple of months later, which is fair enough, isn't it? Because he's done that repeatedly, you will accept.
I don't know how accurate that is.
Exactly.
Putin's just going to renege on it shortly afterwards.
And Trump was saying, how do you really know? I mean, if you're really coming from that position, that no one can guarantee anything. But if you don't move forward to get something into an agreement and then be able to put the right security.
But what has Putin said that gives you or President Trump any indication at all that he even wants a ceasefire? Putin has said he doesn't want a ceasefire at this point.
Putin is... Look, I'm not here to have an argument because you clearly have a position that I don't agree with.
What would that be? What would that position be?
Well,
I mean, we would both agree, wouldn't we, for a start, that Putin started the war?
Yeah, what I would say is that Putin legally violated international law. Morally, he thought he was right. And strategically,
but you would agree that morally he was wrong.
I know I would not agree morally is wrong. I would agree legally he was wrong.
You would agree. You would not think that a man who literally, as we speak, still sends drone attacks to kill Ukrainian civilians is morally wrong.
Oh, and you think that Ukraine isn't doing anything to the Russians?
Ukraine didn't invade Russia. Russia invaded Ukraine. That you wouldn't agree that was morally wrong.
Okay, all right. You know what? That is 3 years ago.
Right. So if we were sat in 1942, would you have been on the radio going, "Look, don't worry about it. Hitler invaded Poland 3 years ago"?
You know what? I didn't sign on for this hypothetical discussion.
It's not hypothetical. I'm just trying to tease out the logic of what you're saying, Dr. Halper-Hayes.
One is that James Baker and Thatcher and Mitterrand and Kohl, etc., had promised that NATO would not move 1 inch eastward, and that was violated.
Those
so
countries.
You want to look at all the different people that violated their agreement?
When did America start basically just sort of representing what Moscow thinks? Those countries wanted to be part of the NATO club. Your club. Are you saying that they should never have been allowed to exercise their democratic and sovereign rights as nations and join that club?
Oh, God. You know what? I don't like having my words twisted. No, I really don't.
You don't like... Well, that's the point of an interview, isn't it? Is to discuss what you're saying. And I'm just asking you... You're saying... With respect, Doctor, I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. You're saying that those countries should never have been allowed to join NATO, and then we wouldn't have been in this situation. And I'm saying to you that surely those countries should have been allowed...
I didn't say that. Well, see, that's why... No, hold on a minute.
But you cited what happened in the... so you're saying that it's fine for them to join NATO, then?
I didn't say any of those things, and I don't like when someone tries to give words and interpret without understanding. I'm done. Okay. I'm off. I don't like you.
Okay. Well, that's fine, Dr. Halper-Hayes. Maybe some of the listeners won't like you, but that's fine. I'm entirely indifferent to that. I'm very grateful for your time. Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes there, former Global Vice President.
That's what I call... Oh, excuse me. I'm just going to sort out a little technical... Check. had a little bit of a technical issue here, so I'm going to pause the stream. I'll be back shortly.